the key to manifestation is flow, but we rarely think about flow in terms of clutter and what's around you, because you must understand that no matter what it is, an item or a series of items in your life are either aligning you with your future self, with your purpose or what it is that you wish to manifest, or is draining you or is taking you further away from that desire. So what I want you to understand here today is that clutter, right, is essentially an energy block. So this pertains to all aspects of your life, but to make it simpler, we can relate it to, say, physical clutter, your physical space, because your physical space is actually, right, is actually a manifestation. Let's say your outer space is a manifestation of your inner space. So whatever is going on, right, outside of you, quote unquote, when I say outside of you, we're going to just say that that has a multitude of many layers as to what that means and what that really is. But when I say outside of you, I'm saying outside of your physical skin, but that doesn't mean it isn't you. Okay. Because the reality is all the layers outside of this physical skin are still you. But outside of your physical skin, right, your space, your dwelling, the place you live in, your apartment, your home, your office, even your car, it is a manifestation of what's going on within you, what's going on within your consciousness, within your ego, within your conscious mind, and most definitely within your subconscious mind. You see, you have to understand that all objects carry with it a frequency. Now, does that frequency align with your desire? Right? And when we say our desire, what we're talking about is your future self, because we don't have a desire unless we're meant to fulfill that desire. So every object carries with it a frequency. Now you are supposed to ask yourself, does this object actually match the frequency of my desire? Okay. Now, when you do that at a certain time frame, to say, for example, for me, I identify myself as a minimalist. And what I often do is I give myself a time frame of like 6 months, right? And what I do is I ask myself this thing, especially when I go through my cleaning, I go through my spring cleaning, summer, winter, fall, all those things. I'm asking myself, when I clean up and I look at particular objects that haven't been used for some time, or even clothes that haven't been worn in some time, I ask myself, do I really need this? Right? Can I let this go? Now, what happens is it allows me to have a space for me to recognize my desire, my future self, and the separation between my future self and my past self. Okay? Because we know from moment to moment, we are constantly shifting from the present to the future, right? Which then becomes the present, which then becomes a present, which then becomes a present. And eventually, when we look back, the past is somebody we once were, or a remnant of who we once were. So we have to acknowledge that at some point, you're going to reach this moment in present experience and look back and notice you're shifted, you've changed. And so these items, right? These objects of the past self will still remain because they don't shift when you shift, right? Not naturally. They will still just exist in that space and time, right? Not time, but in that space. So you will have to ask yourself, right? When you get to this point, you're going to look back at these objects and you're like, wait a minute, okay, these are some things that I need to let go because they are not who I am now, right? Whether it be, you know, they don't fit you, right? Because you've taken on being the person who is fit, right? Whether they're not even in your, level of maybe style because you've changed and you've adapted the style of your desired future self, right? They may not even carry the same value, maybe you stop wearing inexpensive clothes and now you have taken yourself to another level of really high end clothing. And so now all of these items from this past self don't hold any weight for you, right? You don't identify with them anymore. So you had to let them go. And so what often people do though is they will accumulate. First off, most people don't even clean up and do any real serious spring cleaning, right? So what they would do is just simply accumulate all of these things from the past self, right? From a different frequency. I'm tempted to say a lower frequency, right? Because we're always looking to increase our frequency and our existence and experience. But essentially, we don't want to put judgment on who we once were. We want to absolutely express love and gratitude for that version of us because it led us to this version. But ultimately, what I want you to understand is objects are frequencies. And when you understand that when you are aligning yourself with the future self frequency that you know yourself to truly be, you have to remember the significance of particular objects. Okay. Because old objects carry with it a stagnant energy, and that stagnant energy, though it isn't that significant when you look at it in the, item per item, but when you look at it as a collection, say for people who are, say, hoarders or people who collect things that really have no serious value, they don't increase in value over time, but they just like collecting things like old newspapers and, you know, just weird stuff, China, which some people can argue, increases in value, but I don't think so, right? But you want to be mindful about what it is you are holding on to, the significance of it. Is it truly gaining value? How much space is it taking up? Because the space, right, when we think about it from a physical standpoint, if you have a lot of clutter, we're talking about like just the simplicity of air and movement and freedom in your space. That clutter translates in how you feel within your own body and how you feel in your mind, how you think and process things. If your space is full of clutter, right? Come on now, you're not getting adequate oxygen and air. And just from a biological standpoint, you're not probably the healthiest person in the world. So let's get healthy. Let's align with the version of ourselves who we know we want to be. Nobody says they want to be unhealthy. Nobody says they want to be, unfit, right? That they want to be lesser than what they already are. We all want to expand and evolve. That's the nature of nature. So we have to acknowledge that this is very, very, very important. You see, the energy of what it is that you're holding on to will essentially hold on to you as well. So you have to be mindful about that. You can't think that you're going to hold on to these things and that is not going to affect you. Now, yeah, you are essentially the greater of, the objects, right? You are denser in mass and larger. So when we talk about like the gravitational pull or the influence that you have as a creator, yeah, those things are truly insignificant. When we look at them one item at a time, right? They don't influence you one thing at a time as much as you influence it. But the truth of the matter is, as a collective, and as you are constantly surrounding yourself with and in that space of holding on and of the past, it is keeping you from moving forward faster. And that's the point. You want to be in a space where you are free to move at the speed in which you think and as you align yourself with who you are, you know? So just keep in mind your outer space is a reflection of your inner space. You know, a cluttered room represents a cluttered mind. So, and I want to say that this isn't exact. This isn't so much of a thing where you know, okay, I know for a fact this person is a cluttered mind because their space is cluttered. Everybody's a little bit different. So we are talking in terms of a general statement, but it isn't something that you should look at other people with a sense of judgment. This is an opportunity for you to look at yourself always. Everything that I do right up here, give you, is for you. And so it is an opportunity for you to look at yourself. Okay. And yeah, I know sometimes I'll look at people, say, for example, people's car, and I'll look in their car and their car be full of stuff like papers all up to the back of the windshield and everything. And I'm like, wow, I'm just like always impressed by how people can live in such disarray and chaos. But, it's not for me to judge. Right. So, but I know for me to live in that environment is unacceptable. Why? Because I know how it makes me feel. I know how much weight it carries and it is upon me when I live in a space like that. And so I am constantly being mindful about my space, making sure I have room to move freely, right? That I have cleanliness, right? That things are put in the same place all the time. You know what I mean? It's like where you put your keys when you come in, where you put your keys and where you put your wallet or your purse when you come inside your house or your room. That should happen all the time. And if you put it someplace different, right, when you're looking for it, you're all over the place. So imagine if you had a house full of chaos. Imagine if your mind was full of chaos and full of things. This is why you should simplify your thought process, simplify your purpose, your desires, what it is that you want to do. If you have 1,000 goals, right, and you're moving, you have 1,000 different goals. Right. This is an example, right? And you are here and you're jumping from here to here to here. And then one moment here, and then one moment here, and one moment here, and one moment here. You're all over the place. You're scattered all over the place. And you see, I almost missed something. That's an example in itself. When you do things like this, you tend to miss things, right? So I missed this one. This one could be very important. This one could be the love of your life. This one could be the most important thing, your health, your spiritual well-being, right? For example. And so if you're chasing all these other things, then it's going to leave you imbalanced. So you have to come up with or have a deep understanding as to what is the thing, right? Or which are the few things, right? So that way you can truly organize. You can say, okay, this is the main thing. This is the main thing. And from this, I will influence these things. So let's say this is the main thing, and we can call that health, right? And through health, we can say, I'm going to use what I learned from health to create wealth. And then I'm going to learn or apply what I learned from health to attract or create an amazing, loving relationship. You can do it another way. It's all up to you. It's what resonates with you. Really, honestly, it starts with what do you think is the most important thing right now in your life? You may say, you know what? My health is good. I'm in a great relationship. I want to focus 100% on building wealth. You see? And then you use that to continue to cultivate all of these other areas. But you don't just go all over the place. You know what? I want a new car. I want to go on vacations. I want to start a new hobby. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to sit and watch Netflix. And then you focusing on these things, right? Because these things seem more easy. So what's going to happen? You're going to do the easiest things first, right? What appears to be easy to you instead of doing the most important thing. And this essentially is what sometimes people who had this mindset or way of thinking, this is how they live. This is how their physical space will look like. So you have to be clear, right? And when I mean clear, right? Classic house. When I mean clear, you have to keep your house clear. You cannot have your house full of things all over the place. Remember, your house is an extension of your body, and your body is a temple. So we can even compare and say that your house is a temple. It is. It is a extension of your body. Your consciousness is housed in your body, and then your body is housed in your house or your apartment. So you have to think about it just like you think, okay, about your body. You cannot have full of clutter going on in your body. You cannot eat just random things all the time, whenever, right? I take that back. You can, but you most definitely should not. And so you should be mindful about your temple, right? And then where that temple is housed, right, is just another extension of a temple. And so you want to be mindful about that. So you want to make sure that you don't have your house full of stuff, because that is going to take away from your experience. So what are we doing? We're going to cleanse. We're going to clear up the clutter. We're going to allow for a space where we can actually kind of go backwards here. You know, usually in manifestation, the thought process is focus on within and then it will express itself without. But sometimes the other way works too. So, you know, say if your mind is full of clutter, okay, and you had a cluttered space as a result, we can say, you know what, we're going to clear the house. We're going to clear out our apartment. We're going to get rid of the things that no longer serve us. We're going to get rid of that stagnant energy. You see, we're going to allow ourselves to essentially serve our future self, align with the future self. What does your future self look like? Does it look like somebody who lives in a cluttered, filthy house? No, right? So let's start aligning with it. Clean up the house. Start with something simple, right? You can start with a room. You can start with one closet. You can start with one dresser drawer. Okay? One day at a time. Let's go through one dresser drawer. Okay? Let's see what this drawer looks like. Let's take out everything in there that we haven't used in 6 months, a year, 10 years, right? We can say, you know what? If I haven't used this in 10 years, chances are I'm not going to use this in another 10 years. Therefore, I don't need it. By the time I need it, 20 years later, it'll be something way more involved and better that I can use for whatever it is, right? So, you know, it's really about making sure your steps and your process of this journey of spirituality is what I like to say is sustainable, okay? Because that's the key. to consistency. You always hear about consistency, but you don't hear about sustainability. In order for you to be consistent, right, which is ultimately leads to success, you have to make sure everything that you do is sustainable, meaning you can do it continuously over and over and over again until the end of time, if that's what it takes. So start with something doable for you that's easy. Start with a drawer, start with one closet, start with a room. Okay. Start with, every time you go in your closet to check out what you're going to wear the next day, start with one item, one clothes item. Look at it and ask yourself, you know what? Do I need this? Say, or have I worn this? Put it in the bag and say, you know what? I'm going to donate it to Goodwill or whoever, or some homeless shelter or organization. What is this doing for you spiritually? What is this doing for you? This is essentially allowing you to practice letting go. What are you letting go of? The old self. Okay. The old self is essentially identity, limiting beliefs, right? Old ways of thinking that weren't productive, fears. So all of this ties in together. Everything in some degree is metaphysical and is spiritual. It is all connected. When you recognize that your house, your space, your body is essentially the bridge, right, between what it is that you desire and what it is that you're materializing, right? So what it is you desire and what you're manifesting. When you understand that, okay, if I keep my house in order, right, and this is not any kind of like relationship thing advice, right? This is not about gender and who is supposed to do what. No, this is just simply about cleanliness, space. It's about clutter. It's about letting go of old things. When you start to focus on that, okay, that then sets a space, it sets a tone. It aligns you to actually begin recognizing what it feels like to have a free space. And then you start to experience that and start to apply that in your own mind with everything else. You see? And so all these things that you have cluttered up in your mind start to go away. And then it just leaves one singular thought, which could be and should be your purpose. You see? One thing, right? One process, one idea of how you can maximize space. It can start off something small, but ultimately make the biggest shift. And so when you start off with one thing, it builds up a momentum. And that momentum creates, as you can see here, manifestation, right? It lends itself to manifestation. And when you recognize that, okay, it is how I carry myself every single day in the smallest way possible, the smallest degree possible, is going to help you to actually align, right, with the version of you that has love, right? You bring that into the now. That's what we're talking about. Instead of it being something far away, we bring it to the now by practicing and living based on the principles of who you desire to be, which is who you truly are. All right. So it's important to recognize everything along the spiritual journey. We don't think much about things like clutter. We don't think much about space, like how you're living, your living conditions. We don't talk a lot about that in spirituality, but it's something that it should be obvious to you because, it's like sleep, for example. a large majority, or not majority, a large part of your life is about sleep. So we should talk about sleep more. A large part of your life is about you being home, right? What does home feel like? What does home look like? That is something that should be in alignment or a big part of your spiritual journey. So when you understand that your home is a temple, an extension of your physical body, right? The temple of your consciousness, then you're able to recognize that, hey, if I clean daily, if my space is cleaned, then I stay aligned. It's easier for me to stay aligned with that version of me that I know I am, you know? And it's important to really think about it this way because, you know, you see it, you feel it, you be it. And with decluttering, essentially you embody, because I'm sure, like I said, you don't see a version of yourself that you desire, envy, want to be, right? Where you're living in clutter or disarray or discomfort. So in order for you to align with that version of yourself you desire to be, then you have to start just implementing these small, fragmented, small, sustainable things that accumulate and add up over time, you know, is really recognizing that 1% improvement every day and how it'll make you a completely different person by the end of the year, 30 times over. You see? So clear one thing, right, every single day. And as you do that, you will start to collapse time. You will start to bring the version of who you are and see yourself now, right? You will start to fold. Say, for example, I remember seeing this example in an old school movie called Event Horizon. It's kind of a sci-fi horror movie where you identified you are here in this present space, but you want to go here. And so what this machine or this spaceship was able to do is it was able to fold space and time so that way you here will be connected with you over here. And so that's essentially what you're doing. You see this line, really what the line represents is you doing the small things, you embodying this version of you, right? Because you have an image, you have an idea what that version of you is. So all you have to do is start implementing, okay, what that version of you looks like. And then you start to slowly fold time and these things begin to overlap. And this version of you essentially becomes this version of you. So start small, right? Because those small shifts manifest into big results. Thank you so much. Feel free, go to futureselffrequency.com, purchase the book and the journal. If you have any questions, concerns, or just comments, please leave them in the comment section below. Peace and abundance always.